What's up, guys? Today we're going to be going over the Lament and breaking down its DPS and comparing it to some of the other top heavy choices in the game to see if Lament is still the DPS king or not. And before we get into the video, round 2 for the GFUEL Madness has started and will last through Thursday night. This round is also based on code usage, and my code will be 30% off as long as we're still in the tournament. And to make it into round 3, we have to be in the top 16 of cells. So if you ever want to just try GFUEL, or if you need to stock up on any, this is pretty much the best opportunity yet, because if we make it to round 3, we are one step closer to getting that Greg Shaker Cup. So go ahead and click the link in the comments and description, head over to their store and check out what they have. If you're not a huge energy drink person, you can always try their hydrate line. And yeah, thanks for all of the support so far. If we make it into the next round, I'll try my best in the content rounds to get that Shaker Cup. Anyways, let's go and begin with the video. First, looking at the Lament, it's pretty straightforward how to use it. You block, then do 3 light attacks into a heavy attack. That is pretty much the optimal combo to get max DPS. And look at that combo on Carl. The buff will stack all the way up to ×9. Then the heavy attack will do a huge chunk of damage at the end, and that full combo does 209,000 damage, which is quite a bit. It almost kills Carl just those 4 attacks alone. Then look at how long it takes to do that combo. It takes 2.3 seconds, which means almost 90,000 DPS. So that is going to be like the benchmark for this video, roughly 90,000 DPS. And the thing about Lament is you can chain this combo pretty quickly, especially with something like Lucent Blade for the second part, where it will greatly increase the recharge rate of your equipped swords. So now what you can do is do the combo, then pretty much do 3 light attacks in between. Then you already have enough energy to do a full combo again, because you just need enough to be able to do the full combo, and that's it. You don't need to wait for the full charge, and that will drop it down to roughly 68,000 DPS. So it still has pretty good DPS even over multiple combos. So if we compare that to the best legendary sword in the game, the Fallen Guillotine, with the god roll of Whirlwind Blade, Relentless Strikes, then also Sword Masters and Jagged Edge, we look at all the damage numbers for Whirlwind Blade all the way up to ×5, then do heavy attack. The heavy attack will hit 6 times, which isn't that much, but it's still pretty good. And now that we have those numbers, looking at the rate of fire of the sword, doing one combo will take roughly 3 seconds, which means 60,000 DPS. So the burst DPS of Guillotine is way lower than Lament. But the thing about Guillotine is with Whirlwind Blade, once you're past the first combo, you'll have ×5 the rest of the way. So the DPS doesn't really fall off at all. So doing 2 full combos still is at 55.6 thousand. So like I mentioned, doesn't really fall off, but still quite a bit lower than Lament, and not nearly as high of a burst DPS for the one combo. And same with legendary weapons, the other best legendary weapons are rocket launchers. So looking at pretty much any of them, with Frenzy, which is the highest damage increase of 20%. Looking at the damage on Carl, it's only hit for roughly 94,544 per rocket, which is a lot for a single rocket. Then for this video, I'm gonna be looking at 2 rockets, then 4 rockets for rate of fire numbers. 2 took 2.1 seconds, now 4 will take a little bit longer. And as usual, for most of our DPS testing, we're using max rate of fire with Luna and stuff like that. And 4 rockets took 6.444 seconds. So 2 rockets was pretty much the exact same as Lament at 89,000. Then 4 rockets, it fell off a little bit harder than Lament. But with some of the demo tricks and reloading tricks with melees, you can easily get the sustained DPS to pretty much the same as Lament. So the legendary rocket was pretty good. So how about exotic rocket, Deathbringer, which we saw in my exotic video was pretty much the best in theory. So look at the damage on Carl once again. If we let it fall as long as possible to get the max damage buff, it will hit for 22,134 per individual projectile, and there's gonna be 7 per Deathbringer shot, which means in theory just under 155,000 total damage output per rocket. So now if we look at the rate of fire of Deathbringer once again with 2 rockets and 4 rockets, I'm gonna try to keep it as realistic as possible, where I hold the rocket for quite a while to get the max height, that way it can drop and get the full damage buff. The 2 rockets took 3.5 seconds, now looking at 4. And one thing you can do is hold reload after you shoot to reload while still holding the rocket, which means both the burst and sustained DPS are higher than what we saw for Lament. So this is the first thing that is slightly higher than the Lament in both numbers. But the thing about Deathbringer is, depending on the boss, it's going to be pretty inconsistent to hit all 7 projectiles every single time. Up next, I wanted to look at Xenophage, which is a classic from Garden. Looking at damage on Carl, 22,197. Then just looking at rate of fire of 10 shots, if you're on Titan, you would never have to reload. If you're on a different character, obviously reloading would greatly decrease your DPS. But just looking at 10 shots, the DPS was just under 50,000, which obviously isn't good compared to the other things. But kind of like Coil, depending on what boss you're doing, Xeno is pretty good. Up next, let's try comparing it to Whisper of the Worm. So looking at damage on Carl with Whisper Breathing, it's only for 40,929. Now looking at the rate of fire with White Nail, 6 shots, you should never have to reload with this weapon, and that took just over 4 seconds, meaning the DPS is 61,302. So Whisper doesn't have that high like burst peak that swords and rockets have, but its sustained DPS is pretty much on par. The GL of choice for this video will be the Prospector. Look at damage on Carl. It's looking for quite a few numbers and some burn damage, and per shot it hits for 25,209. Now looking at rate of fire once again with 1 mag and then 2 mags. This thing has full auto, so it's pretty quick, taking 2.5 seconds. Then for 2 magazines with 1 reload, then be a little bit longer at roughly, still going, 7.295 seconds, meaning DPS of 1 is 78,000 with 2 55,000. So it has a decent burst damage, but not as high as swords or rockets. The final thing I want to talk about is Anarchy. And there's all kinds of combos you can do with Anarchy. The most popular one is double slug shotgun, which is still going to be pretty much the best DPS for Tanix for crit bosses. So that is still pretty much the best way to go for Tanix, but not really too much else in the game. So yeah, comparing Lament to some of the other top choices in the game, you can see that Lament still has pretty much the best burst DPS, then it also can hang in sustained DPS, and the weapon type that is the closest to Lament or rocket launchers, both legendaries and exotics, are both pretty good. But everything else, the exotic snipers, the GLs, all those things need a little bit of help, and they really don't compare to either Lament or the rockets. And not to mention that Lament is extremely good versus champions and things like that. It's pretty much the best weapon versus champions in the game, especially when you're on light or just slightly below light. It might not be the best for GMs unless you're like trying to speedrun, because it's pretty risky. Then on top of that, Lament also gives you health back on damage. So Lament is still obviously extremely good exotic, and pretty much what I've still been using all season. I've been pairing it with the Extraordinary Rendition, and also the Salvo with my Firepower and Blast Radius build. And that has pretty much been my go-to loadout and build for the entire season. And yeah, Lament still feels really good. Really good for bursting down Ultras, Majors, Champions, and it's still extremely good for boss fights. So is Lament still the DPS king? I would say, yeah, overall. I think some of the rockets have gotten closer, and depending on the boss fight or whatever weapons you're using, rockets are almost just as good. So I think the DPS king, whatever title, would be shared between Lament than some of the rockets right now. Anyways, the rest of the video will just be some strike gameplay with my build. Let me know what you guys think about Lament right now, and what other weapons you'd like to see me test this season. Anyways, thanks for watching. Catch you guys next time.